All right, so I am here in the studio today. It's a little bit cold, so I've got my hoodie on, but I am uber excited. I'm very excited because new studio setup here. You can't see all the inner workings of what I've built here, but it's kind of complex, a little bit complicated, but it's going to be really cool for me in terms of recording. And I'm very thrilled to be able to invite you in today to my studio. And I'm going to be working on this painting. Now, this is a painting that I had started. I don't know exactly when, but it's been a while. Like it was more than a year ago. And somehow I started it. I actually am really excited about it, but it kind of got set aside while I had other paintings to work on and things like that. I just pulled it out the other day. There was a couple came over and they were looking to get a painting, and they saw this one, and the wife is quite interested in it, wants me to finish it. So that's what I'm going to be working on. I also have to set up the paint in my palette, and I just thought I'd take a moment to shout out Winsor & Newton Professional Acrylics. Like, I love acrylic paints. I'm a huge fan of acrylic paints in general. These Winsor & Newton Professional Acrylics have a very, they have gotten a special place in my heart because they are wonderful to work with in so many ways. Okay, listen, the actual heavy body nature of them, they're nice that way. Like, they're easy to work with. They're nice and buttery, and they're thick, but you know, just the consistency of them is great. The color, the amount of pigment that's in there is wonderful. You know, if you want to have as much pigment in there, less binder. I mean, the percentages need to be good. That's the difference between student grade paint and artist grade paint, is that the amount of pigment is much higher in a artist grade paint. So it's got that going for it. It's a really nice, the pigments are good and the saturation levels are great. The thing that makes it stand out, though, to me is not any of those things. It is the fact that it doesn't have color shift. What it does is it is made with a clear binder or the polymer, whatever they make it with. It's different than normal. Normally, these acrylic paints are made with a somewhat white binder. So that means like it starts clear. I'm trying to think about it. It starts white, but it dries clear. So it changes a little bit when it dries. And that's why, if you've ever worked with acrylic paints and you've had this issue of, oh my goodness, it changed colors when it dried, that's why. It's because the binder is changing a little bit in that process as it dries. It's becoming more, I forgot a space here. I have one other color if I can find it. Oh, I must not have grabbed it. That's okay. I'll put this one on. I was going to put on a different color here, but it would have gone like right in there, but I forgot it. But this, because of its clear binder, it does not change color very much. It really doesn't color shift the way that most acrylic paints do. And so to me, that is the special part of Winsor & Newton Professional Grade paints, is that it really stays, like, you put it down and you come back to it after it's dry and it's the same color. And someday I will do a test and I will show you guys what I'm talking about, and we'll just be able to look at it. I'm not saying anything about any other brand, because the other brands are great. I've had a lot of good times painting in lots of different colors. So it's really not about saying that other paints are not good. It's just saying that I've really found that I appreciate the way that this clear base, this clear binder, keeps the paint as close as possible to the color as you put it down. So if that's something that you have ever thought about or cared about, you might want to give them a shot and just see what you think. They are not El Cheapo paints, so you're not going to find them at a really cheap discount usually, because they're nice and they're professional paints. So you're not going to find a student grade paint. And I do need to clarify that. Don't buy the Winsor Newton. They have a Galleria kind of paint. And if you buy that, it's not the same. And you need to know it's not the same, because it won't do the same things. It doesn't have that nice clear binder. So anyway, it's going to be totally different. Now, I'll tell you, just because I know somebody's sitting here and saying, like, what colors did you just put out? This is titanium white. This is cadmium yellow light. This is cadmium orange. This is called burnt orange. This is naphthol red. This is called permanent rose in Winsor Newton. A lot of companies will call it quinacridone red or potentially quinacridone magenta. This is ultramarine blue. This is dioxazine violet. It looks black, but it's violet. And you'll be able to see that a little bit easier if I do that. This is chromium oxide green, and this is phthalo green. So those are the colors that I've got here today. And I'm going to start. I've got a little bit of work to do on this painting in terms of getting some of these shapes a little bit adjusted. They need to be, some of them need to be adjusted a little bit before I start on, refining things. I kind of need to, I got some of the basics of this blocked in, but I need to start actually correcting. Need to get my paper towels. How are you today? What's going on in your world? Send me a comment down below and let me know what you're thinking about. And if you ever are interested in seeing something in particular, put that down there too. And who knows, maybe I'll paint something that's related someday. For today, this is what I got. Now, this is a beautiful scene, and it's actually kind of close to where I live. So this is part of the area that needs a little bit more work right here. This peak is a little bit taller. It's not as tall as this, but it's kind of close. So see what we can do here. I said no to a couple things today. And honestly, it was a big relief to me. And it made me remember, oh yeah, I need to flex my no muscle more. We're all limited. We have limited time, limited capacity. And yet sometimes we make decisions as if we've got all the time in the world. And that's kind of how I have been recently, is just not really thinking through the use of my time. as well as I needed to. And so today I made a decision to opt out of a couple things. One was an idea that I had come up with and had started down the path of this idea. And the other was a group that I've been part of that I just was not having the time to really engage with, but it was still occupying space in my mind. And I just, as much as I loved it and wanted to be part of it, I just needed to say, not right at this moment. I need to focus on what I need to focus on. So I don't know exactly how long this painting is going to take me. I don't anticipate getting it done in this session because I'm actually going to have to get off here and do a little bit of different work. Now, some of this color that I'm putting down, it's a little bit more blue than the color that was down there before. And potentially a little bit lighter than some of the paint that was down there before too. Oh, I shouldn't have really put that there. That was. So what you have is you have some hills and you have some mountains. Hills, foothills kind of right in front of the mountains. So you see snow. You see snow, a fair amount of snow on the mountains, but the foothills that are in front, they don't really have snow on them. So you get a little bit of this lighter blue where the snow is. A lot of times we tend to think that snow is white, but most of the time in your paintings, you do not want to paint it white. Most of the time it's not white. Like this paint is, or this snow is not white. It's in the shadow. Ooh, I love this. I love painting. Isn't painting fun? Okay, and then there's a bit more of the snow color up here. It comes down kind of like that. And then there's another ridge that comes down. Let's see. That's actually good news. My dad is on his way over, but he was feeling bad. He said, "I'm sorry, I'm just leaving right now," but he couldn't have. There's no reason to feel sorry about that because that actually is good for me. That's helpful. Gives me a little bit extra time to be here and do this right now. Okay, so I need to work on the next layer of color. So I'm going to add some more blue into that. Maybe a tiny bit of this dioxazine. Now, a lot of times I paint the other way around. I'll paint the foreground and then I'll work my way to the background. In this case, I'm doing it a little bit more traditionally. So there's also a little bit of atmosphere, kind of fog down on the bottom edge of this hill, which would be kind of fun to put in. And that's why I'm not covering everything right now. But you can see this is starting to add a little bit more depth. So now I'm going to grab this misty, hopefully this will be like a misty transition up into that color I just put down. So I need to try to get the value right. And then we'll do some smudging as it gets close. I want the tops of these to not all look the same. There is a little variation in this hill back here, and it's right around that point. I actually think it needs to be emphasized a little bit because the pattern, I didn't like the pattern of that. So are you looking forward to, it's right now for me, it is December. Thinking about the next year, thinking about what's coming up. Are you the kind of person that, do you live more in the present, the future, or the past? Like, do you find it easy to look at the past and maybe you have regrets, or maybe you have some things that you wish you go back and redo, or wish things hadn't happened, or maybe you feel like you've let opportunities slip you by, or most of the time, or maybe you're like living in the past in the way of, man, those were the good old days, and everything was perfect back then and wishing you could go back, right? Like, it'll never be the same as what it was then. Are you that kind of person? Either looking at the past in really positive light, like it's your dream world to go back there, or are you the kind of person who looks back at the past and says, oh, I never want to go there, that was the worst, and you live with regret over what happened or something like that? But both of those sometimes are just based on looking at the past more. Or are you somebody who looks at the future more? Maybe you're wishing that you could jump into the future right now. Do either of those things resonate with you? Like, yeah, I think that I live in the past a lot. Or, yeah, I think I live in the future a lot. You're always hoping, dreaming, or planning, but maybe sometimes the negative, I mean, everything can be a strength, right? But there's usually also a negative part to a strength. And that could be that for those people who live in the future, maybe it's you're missing out on today. I think that actually goes for both living in the past and living in the future. I think for me, I would say, I think I've always actually, I don't know if this is totally true, but I think I've almost erred on the side of living in the present almost too much and not living. Maybe it would be living in the present and the past, but not living in the future as much as I could. Or I shouldn't say living in the future. Maybe I'm using the wrong language, but I think that my natural tendency is to not be a planner. I just kind of go with the flow, and whatever happens, happens. And that was the way I used to be a lot. And so what that would mean is that a lot of times if somebody else had a plan, I was simply deferring to their plan. Whatever you think, whatever you want to do, I'll do. And it also meant that, I'm not really ever going to try for anything too hard, because I don't even have plans or dreams or desires, and so I kind of would just float along through life. But I think that some of those tendencies have shifted and changed quite a bit. I'm still not the most future-oriented person, like planning ahead everything. But I definitely plan more than I used to. I mean, I think it was hard for me to plan anything for a long time. And when I mean anything, I mean anything. You know, that person, that friend of yours that you always feel like is holding out, like you'll say, hey, do you want to go do this thing on Saturday night? And they're like, well, maybe. And you know that they're kind of like holding out because they want to see if something better comes up. That's the way I used to be. I'd be like, why should I ever commit to anything? Because what if something better happens? Problem is that when you won't commit to something, you end up missing out on a lot. And underneath, for me, I'm just speaking about myself, but for me, there was a lot of fear underneath the lack of commitment and the lack of looking ahead and trying to plan and putting forth effort. It was the fear of failure. So I started this, this idea. I shouldn't say I started it, but for me, I started a website recently called braveartist.com, and it is like there's nothing really there, but the idea has been in my head, like, what does it look like for an artist to be brave, to have courage, for somebody who's creative? What does courage look like in art and creativity? I'm looking at this painting and I'm just like trying to reconcile, like, why does it look so, it's kind of washed out in the video. And I don't really know why. The colors I'm looking at are quite a bit more vivid, like the yellows that I'm putting down right now. But I'm definitely at this place in life now where I think if it's not worth doing with all my heart, like, it's not worth doing. If I can't throw myself into it completely and wholeheartedly, maybe I should consider whether I should be doing it at all. Okay. Need to lighten this value here. This is going to be some clouds. These clouds are right over in this area. I like that color for the clouds. I think I'll try to add in a little bit of blue every once in a while to that, but I feel like the general color is pretty good. But it takes courage. Henry Matisse, one of my favorite art quotes ever, he said, creativity takes courage. And I've seen that in myself, that a lot of times I used to be so afraid. When I'd be starting a painting. And sometimes it would keep me from even starting. And now, after working with so many people, I see it all the time in people, that it just takes courage to do art. Because I think that art is such an expression of yourself, that there's something in it that's like, oh no, I don't want to not do a great job myself. So I think I'm at a place. I think I heard my dad. I think he's here. I think I'm gonna have to pause it right now, but we'll see you next time.